The story begins with a grim scene, countless skulls scattered across the ground, the remains of players who failed the challenge. Out of all the participants in this deadly game, only one has survived, Black Scythe. He made it this far after 99 attempts. Now, he walks into a glowing chamber where a group of guardians are already waiting for him. Without hesitation, Black Scythe draws his massive scythe. The guardians immediately charge at him, but he swiftly dodges their attacks and activates his skill, Seal of Death. This skill marks a target with a skull symbol above their head. Once marked, any attack from Black Scythe deals 100% bonus damage. He targets the marked guardian and takes them down with ease. Enraged, the remaining guardians launch a coordinated assault. In response, Black Scythe unleashes another skill, Night of Death. The entire area is plunged into darkness, blinding the enemies and allowing him to attack freely while staying hidden. But the guardians are no ordinary foes. They manage to dispel the darkness and retaliate with a barrage of fire and ice magic. Caught off guard by their speed, Black Scythe takes a direct hit. Desperate, he activates speed increase to dodge the next wave of attacks. But just as he evades the fire, he steps onto an ice magic circle hidden beneath him. Before he can react, he's frozen solid. As the guardians prepare to strike the immobilized Black Scythe, he suddenly breaks free by activating Moonlight Destruction. This will never end if I keep fighting them one by one, he thinks. I'll end it all at once. He reactivates Moonlight Destruction and unleashes another devastating skill, Red Moon. The attack wipes out all the remaining guardians. With the path now clear, Black Scythe proceeds deeper into the structure, arriving at a temple-like room with a massive door at its center. He steps into a glowing circle and wonders, is this it? Will I finally clear the game? Suddenly, an information window pops up. It states that at least 5 players are required to enter the boss room, but Black Scythe is alone. Shocked and panicking, he learns that failing to meet the requirement means death in 5 seconds. In those final moments, Black Scythe lashes out in frustration before giving in to despair. Time resets. He regresses once again, to the moment before round 1 began. This is his 100th regression. The scene shifts to a temple where a crowd is gathered. Among them is Ryumin, who has just regressed again. He's furious. This was his 99th failure. Now that he knows 5 people are needed to enter the boss room, Ryumin decides to find 4 allies and bring them to the final round with him in this run. Everyone outside the temple had gathered just minutes before the new year. Meanwhile, Ryumin's classmates, who used to bully him, are chatting nearby. They're discussing getting their IDs and what they'll do after graduation. One says he'll become a food delivery guy, while another dreams of becoming a gangster. That second one is Ryumin, and even after graduation, he has no intention of letting Ryumin go. He plans to keep using him as his personal lackey. Then they noticed where Ryumin was standing. After a moment of locking eyes from afar, Ryumin grew annoyed by Ryumin's persistent stare. Time quickly passed, and the new year finally arrived. Suddenly, a divine figure, a goddess, appeared, floating above the temple. All eyes turned to her in shock. The goddess began cursing at the humans below. Most people assumed it was just part of some elaborate New Year event, but Ryumin, who knew the truth, muttered, "She's finally here." One person took offense at the goddess's harsh words, but that only made her angrier. Without hesitation, she blew the man's head off, instantly throwing the crowd into chaos. Panic and screams erupted. The goddess then explained that everyone would now be part of a game. On the first day of each month, for 20 rounds, they would be teleported to another dimension to complete a mission. The only goal, complete the quest given in each round. She continued explaining the rules. Eventually, everyone was instructed to create a body and name their character. Ryumin picked the same body and name he always used, Black Scythe. Soon after, everyone was teleported to a vast open field, using the bodies and names they had just chosen. People excitedly admired their newly created avatars. Ryumin, of course, chose a muscular, bulky body. Then the goddess appeared once again. Everyone saw their own status window for the first time. She also explained the inventory system, which contained a single-use, random rune fragment that could only be used while the player was still level 1. And with that, round 1 began. The first quest, defeat 100 goblins per person. Only 5,143 participants will advance. The goddess spawned the goblins immediately. Without wasting a second, Black Scythe dashed forward, showcasing his overwhelming strength. His incredible display left everyone stunned. He even demonstrated impressive swordsmanship. Thanks to Black Scythe's performance, others began to feel more confident about fighting the goblins too. But then, a goblin ambushed the group, and panic broke out. People scattered in fear, trying to escape. But escape wasn't an option. The area was sealed by a barrier. Realizing there was no way out, the participants had no choice but to fight back. Watching everything unfold, the goddess grew increasingly intrigued by Black Scythe. He cut down goblins with such speed and precision that the goblins themselves began hesitating to attack him. Black Scythe checked his status window and saw that he had reached level 4. He allocated all his stat points into agility, increasing his attack speed and movement speed. After upgrading, he went right back into battle and swiftly finished the quest. Clearing the quest so quickly earned him rank 1 in the zone and rank 1 globally. The top 3 players in each region were given bonus rewards. Black Scythe received 2 prizes, a rare weapon selection coupon for being the top in his zone, and a special reward selection box for topping the global leaderboard. For the weapon, he selected a dagger called Stiletto, while choosing to keep the reward box in his inventory for later. He also received his titles and runes. Like everyone else, he got the time reversal rune and a random rune fragment. But because this was his 100th regression, Black Scythe unlocked a unique title, Last Time Regressor. Titles are even more powerful than runes and much rarer. Some come with exclusive skills. The title he earned included a skill called Resurrect, which allows him to fully recover HP upon death. Realizing how valuable this was, Black Scythe immediately set the title to private. No one else could see it. Black Scythe figured that the others should be close to finishing their quest by now. He also wondered if Ryumin was doing okay. Looking over in Ryumin's direction, Black Scythe assumed he'd managed to pull through. To lighten the mood a little, the goddess made the corpses of the dead disappear and spawned another 50,000 goblins. Despite the overwhelming odds, everyone gave it their all, struggling to survive. The number of remaining slots for players to clear the quest kept shrinking until finally the quota was filled. At that moment, all the remaining goblins vanished, and anyone who hadn't completed the quest was instantly erased, just like the dead. The goddess then revealed the ranking boards, both for the current zone and globally. Everyone already knew who was at the top: Black Scythe, the global #1. Curious, the goddess asked herself, "How did you become this strong? Did you get some kind of special rune or something?" Black Scythe casually replied, "Can't you just check my status window?" The goddess shot back, "You really think a goddess like me wouldn't be able to see your information?" But the truth was, she couldn't. She wasn't able to see individual status windows. Feeling like the rewards for being first weren't good enough, Black Scythe boldly made a request for something more. The goddess was visibly annoyed by his attitude. She even considered blowing up his head, just like she did to the other guy earlier. But the skill she used only worked once. So, instead, she came up with a different plan. With the excuse of giving him a special reward, she invited Black Scythe into the trial forest of assassination. As they walked deeper into the woods, the goddess's contempt for humans became more obvious. She truly believed they were beneath her. She had no intention of handing over a reward. Her real plan was to kill Black Scythe the moment they passed a large rock up ahead. But Black Scythe already knew what she was planning. Just as the goddess turned her head to look behind, Black Scythe struck first. She didn't have time to react. His attack landed cleanly, and she was sent crashing to the ground. Her blood began to spill. It was yellow. She stood back up, furious, ready to retaliate. But when she looked forward, Black Scythe was gone. The next thing she knew, he was already behind her. Without her noticing, he grabbed one of her wings and ripped it off. The goddess screamed in pain. A moment later, he tore off her other wing. Now she couldn't escape by flying. Black Scythe calmly explained that he already knew she had hidden a dagger in one of her wings and planned to kill him with it. She tried to lie her way out, but he saw through it. Then, he spoke her real name, Buriel. Shocked, she asked how a mere human could possibly know that. At that moment, Black Scythe drew his dagger. In a panic, Buriel threatened to blow up his head. But he wasn't fazed. He already knew that skill could only be used once. They exchanged a few final words, and then, without hesitation, Black Scythe drove the dagger straight into her heart. Just like that, the goddess was dead. And from her death, he earned a new title, the First Angel Slayer. Along with that title, he received one item and one rune. He immediately used the rune, Rune of Slaughter, which increases all stats by 1% for every enemy killed. But the real reason he killed the goddess was for the item, Angel's Blood. Its effect? It could change a player's class to Reaper. Normally, when players reach level 10, they can choose a class by defeating monsters or meeting specific conditions. But unique classes like Reaper, those can only be obtained through special events, like this one. After that, Black Scythe opened his inventory and used the selection box he had obtained earlier. From the box, he chose the 3x EXP buff, since his priority now was to quickly level up to level 10 and unlock a class. Round 1 officially ended, and everyone was returned to their real bodies. Most of them looked around in confusion, unsure if what they experienced was real or just a strange dream. Ryumin also glanced around in disbelief, but then they noticed someone who hadn't woken up yet. One of Ryumin's friends went over to check, and the person wasn't breathing. Panic and confusion started spreading among the crowd. But while everyone was freaking out, Ryumin looked thrilled by the situation. Instead of being scared, he was excited. Ryumin began searching for Ryumin, but couldn't find him anywhere, so he assumed Ryumin hadn't survived round 1. Then, Ryumin noticed someone wearing armor. Curious, he tried opening the status window, and it actually worked. Everyone around him followed suit, opening their own status windows in awe. To test it out, Ryumin grabbed a stone and crushed it with his bare hands. The strength he felt was incredible. Meanwhile, news about the strange events in front of the temple had begun to spread. Ryumin, who was watching the report, muttered, "This is just the beginning." He was right. Player abilities had now transferred into the real world. At the moment, no one had high stats yet, so the effects weren't too drastic. But as players level up, they'll become beings that modern weapons can't even touch. Ryumin continued, "I can't just stand by and watch the world fall into chaos. If I let things play out, Earth won't even make it to round 20. There's only one solution. I need to control all the players with overwhelming power." Later, Ryumin returned home. Upon entering, he noticed an empty ramen cup lying around. He headed straight to his room, where he found his younger brother Ryuwan fast asleep. Ryuwan was a third-year middle school student. Their parents had died in an accident, leaving the two of them alone. Ryumin gently adjusted the bandage on his brother's hand and turned on the light. The sudden brightness woke Ryuwan up. Ryumin took the blanket off him and told him to get ready. They needed to go out. He promised to explain everything along the way. As they walked, Ryuwan asked why Ryumin looked so serious. Ryumin replied, "You have no idea what's going on in the world right now, do you?" Ryuwan blinked, confused. "Did something happen while I was sleeping?" Ryumin told him to check the top search results on his phone. After Ryuwan saw the trending news, worry filled his face. Ryumin was the only family he had left. To reassure him, Ryumin explained that he was now stronger than ever before. But instead of just talking, he decided to show Ryuwan what he meant by paying a visit to someone named Bang Taegyu, a thug from Ryuwan's class. In his previous life, Ryumin had discovered that Bang Taegyu had constantly bullied his little brother. One time, when Ryuwan went out while Ryumin was asleep, Ryumin later received a call from the hospital. Ryuwan had been admitted. The result: Ryuwan lost his eyesight, all because of Bang Taegyu. Inside an empty warehouse, Bang Taegyu and his gang were seen beating someone up. Not long after, Ryumin and Ryuwan arrived at the scene. When Bang Taegyu saw Ryuwan, he immediately yelled out his name. He also wondered who the person beside him was. Ryumin stepped forward and introduced himself as Ryuwan's older brother. Bang Taegyu scoffed and mocked Ryumin, then ordered his gang to attack him. But with his abilities, Ryumin easily took them all down. With his underlings defeated, it was finally Bang Taegyu's turn to face Ryumin. Without hesitation, Bang Taegyu launched a punch, but Ryumin dodged every strike effortlessly. Then, Ryumin counterattacked with his strength, forcing Bang Taegyu to stumble back. Bang Taegyu tried to retaliate again, but failed every time. His frustration grew, but no matter how hard he tried, none of his punches landed. Meanwhile, Ryumin kept hitting him, and even broke his fingers, unable to forgive what Bang Taegyu had done to his brother in a previous regression. Ryumin continued to beat him up until the rest of Bang Taegyu's gang ran away, terrified. Once Ryumin had gotten his revenge, he and Ryuwan left the warehouse. On the way home, Ryuwan asked where Ryumin learned to fight like that. Ryumin explained that players could now use their powers in the real world. To prove it, he showed Ryuwan the dagger he received as a reward from round 1. Ryuwan then asked about Ryumin's stats, but Ryumin lied, not wanting Ryuwan to know the truth. In his 11th regression, Ryuwan had been kidnapped after someone found out about Ryumin's power, and Ryumin was determined to prevent that from happening again. Even though he had gotten his revenge, he didn't want his brother to ever feel helpless like that again. Afterward, Ryumin suggested they grab breakfast together. They headed to a supermarket where Ryumin withdrew 100,000 won from his savings. He told Ryuwan to pick anything he wanted to eat, but Ryuwan simply chose spicy pork belly. Ryumin bought it for him, and they started eating right there. Then, Ryumin left for a moment and came back with a pen and 20 lottery tickets, each costing 5,000 won, for a total of 100,000 won. Ryuwan was shocked at what his brother just did. Ryumin just told him to wait and watch. When he finished filling out the tickets, Ryuwan noticed that every single ticket had the exact same numbers. Confused, Ryuwan asked why. Ryumin simply said, "Because those are the winning numbers." After that, they returned home, just in time for the Nado lottery draw. Ryuwan was extremely nervous, still thinking they'd wasted 100,000 won on lottery tickets. He would have preferred spending the money on food instead. But when the numbers were announced, Ryuwan was stunned, and then completely overjoyed. They had won. Tears welled up in his eyes as he stood up and screamed with joy. But for Ryumin, this was nothing new. He had done this many times before in his past regressions. Ryumin knew he had to gather wealth as quickly as possible, because in the future, the global economy would collapse due to 900 million deaths, and item trades between players would mostly be done with cash. Ryuwan still couldn't believe they had actually won the lottery. The next day, Ryumin went to the bank to cash in the ticket. He walked up to the front desk and told the receptionist that he was the lottery winner. At first, the receptionist was skeptical. Ryumin looked like just a regular student. She asked which branch he bought the ticket from. Ryumin answered, "Yonhui branch." The receptionist was stunned. That was the same branch where someone had just won with 115 tickets all at once. She asked Ryumin to wait for a moment. A few minutes later, the president of Nongyu Bank himself came out and escorted Ryumin to a private room. Inside, a woman mistook Ryumin for the bank president's son, but after the president introduced him, she was caught off guard. She began verifying the tickets and was shocked again. How could someone win by filling out all the tickets with the same numbers? Then Ryumin asked how much he had won. The total prize was 22.5 billion won. After taxes, Ryumin walked away with around 15 billion won. With the lottery winnings, Ryumin immediately bought a new home and opened a stock account, planning to invest in Bitcoin, which he knew would increase by 500% next month. He had done the same thing in many of his past regressions. When he returned home and told Ryuwan about it, Ryuwan was shocked, but Ryumin quickly reassured him, saying that he had another dream showing him the next winning lottery numbers. He then told Ryuwan to start packing. They were moving out soon. Meanwhile, Youngmin, who had poured all his stat points into strength, was absolutely thrilled. Now, with just his bare hands, he could punch through solid walls. After finishing his wall-smashing test, Youngmin headed to Ryumin's old house, planning to confront him. Youngmin had noticed Ryumin staring at him multiple times back at the temple, and it had annoyed him deeply. When no one answered the door, Youngmin grew even more irritated and started pounding on it. He still thought someone was inside, not realizing Ryumin had already moved out. Then the house owner showed up and told Youngmin that the previous residents had already left. Only then did Youngmin finally walk away. Back to Ryumin and Ryuwan. They had just arrived at their new home. Ryuwan looked around, clearly amazed. It was his first time seeing a place like this. Once inside, he was even more shocked. The apartment was so spacious, it seemed way too big for just two people. Ryumin had chosen this luxurious high-security apartment for a reason. When players re-enter the game, assassins would often be hired to kill other players in real life. This place was meant to protect him while he was away in the game. Ryuwan felt a bit uneasy, enjoying all this comfort while his brother had to fight in the game for their sake. But Ryumin reassured him that he was strong enough to survive the next round. The next day, Ryuwan suggested they bring rice cakes to greet their new neighbors. They rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Suddenly, a famous celebrity, Seo Arin, appeared behind them along with her bodyguard. Ryuwan was starstruck by her beauty, but the bodyguard quickly blocked them, assuming they were just fans. Ryumin calmly explained that they lived downstairs and had come to give a welcoming gift. But the bodyguard brushed them off and ushered Seo Arin into her home. Ryumin told Ryuwan not to mind them, but Ryuwan was actually thrilled. Their neighbor was a real celebrity. Meanwhile, inside her apartment, Seo Arin was watching the news, worried about the state of the world. She thought to herself, if I don't get a good rune, I might not survive. Her bodyguard came over and asked, "What are you thinking about, Arin?" She replied, "I'm just wondering, how did the world end up like this? How will I survive the next round?" The bodyguard reassured her, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Just like in the first round, the bodyguard had protected Seo Arin, only letting her land the finishing blows on the goblins. Then Seo Arin recalled Ryumin and Ryuwan from earlier and thought maybe she should have accepted the rice cakes. They looked pretty tasty. She also wondered if Ryumin had to kill 100 goblins to survive, judging from his appearance. He definitely looked older than 15. Suddenly the name Black Scythe came to her mind, a player known for his terrifying skills and ability to kill goblins with ease. Seo Arin quietly asked herself, will I be okay after all this? We then skip ahead to Tuesday, January 31st, 11 a.m. Ryuwan was tidying up around the house when Ryumin returned after exchanging another set of winning lottery tickets. Ryuwan asked, "Did you reinvest the prize money into Bitcoin again?" Ryumin smiled and replied, "Yep. It's already grown to 150 billion won." After that, Ryumin told Ryuwan not to worry and invited him to spend some time outside before he had to re-enter the game. They came home at 11:55 p.m., and Ryumin immediately lay down on his bed, getting ready to enter round 2, with Ryuwan staying by his side. Ryuwan said softly, "You have to stay alive and come back, okay?" Ryumin replied with a smile, "Don't worry. You saw me beat up Bang Taegyu, right? I'll be fine. Now go get some sleep. I'm heading off." And just like that, Ryumin teleported back into the game. Everyone around was a bit shocked. They were really back inside the game again. Right away, people started focusing on Black Scythe, the player who had stood out the most in round 1. Then the goddess appeared. But something was off. Everyone noticed she looked different. The goddess then explained that the previous one had been involved in an accident, and she would be the replacement from now on. The goddess appeared once again and immediately gave everyone the second quest. The objective was simple. Choose a regional representative within 3 hours and everyone will survive. Everyone was confused by the quest. The goddess then clarified, all they had to do was pick a representative for their region. This representative would be granted the authority of command, which allows them to forcibly issue orders to others. In 3 hours, everyone would receive a voting ticket. The goddess emphasized once more. They just needed to vote and return to their homes. Everyone was thrilled. There would be no fighting in the second round. After that, the goddess disappeared, and the 3-hour countdown began. Meanwhile, Youngmin was frustrated. He had prepared himself for a battle, only to find out there wouldn't be one. Black Scythe, on the other hand, suspected that Youngmin had once again invested all his points into strength. Realizing that there must be subquests and hidden quests tied to the main quest in this round, Black Scythe headed into the forest. Inside the forest, he encountered a number of monsters. He aimed to reach level 10 as quickly as possible to unlock a class. After killing a hobgoblin, a quest was triggered. Defeat 100 hobgoblins. Black Scythe immediately began his hunt. As he was slaying hobgoblins, he noticed someone hiding behind him. He called out for them to show themselves. It turned out to be Seo Arin and her bodyguard. They apologized for following him, assuring him they meant no harm. When Black Scythe checked the bodyguard's name, he discovered he was the right-hand man of Myeonglok, the eldest son of a powerful corporation in their country. He was also a player known as the Heavenly Demon, Black Scythe had already marked Heavenly Demon as a potential partner for entering the boss room, as he could boost Black Scythe's growth rate. But what Black Scythe really needed was a priest connected to Heavenly Demon. He didn't expect to meet them here and asked, "How long have you been following me?" Seo Arin replied, "From the beginning, since you entered the forest." Seo Arin wanted to propose a partnership, but Black Scythe declined and walked away. He continued hunting hobgoblins until he encountered 5 gnolls at once. However, he easily defeated them, finally reaching level 10. At that moment, a sub-quest appeared: obtain an advancement item and a class. Completing the quest would reward the player with a 50% discount ticket for items. People were puzzled. While everyone understood the value of getting a class, they had no idea how to obtain an advancement item, since it could only be acquired by meeting special conditions. For example, a warrior needed at least 10 strength and had to kill 30 monsters within the same hour. A berserker had to hunt for a while under a bleeding effect. An assassin needed to land multiple back attacks on monsters. Basically, you had to do something that aligned with the traits of the class. Previously, Black Scythe had repeatedly tracked monsters and fled from them in the forest, actions that earned him the Hunter class. Soon after, he used an item called Angel's Blood to evolve his class into Reaper and activated the Reaper rune, a special reward granted to those with that class. After that, Black Scythe also received a large scythe, the signature weapon of a Reaper, and since he had now reached level 10, his rank upgraded from beginner to apprentice. There are 6 rank tiers in total, and each upgrade brings benefits, such as unlocking new classes, new skills, or special features. Here, Black Scythe gained a unique Reaper skill called Insignia of Death, and a random gold pouch, which he used to learn a neutral skill, Tracking. This skill allows him to locate a specific target, as long as he knows their face and nickname. Black Scythe immediately used Tracking to locate Ryumin, and found that he was only about 150 meters away. Following the arrow provided by the skill, Black Scythe set off toward Ryumin's location. Interestingly, during his previous regression, Ryumin had been more than 2 kilometers away at this point. Meanwhile, Seo Arin and her bodyguard were on the run, being chased by Ryumin and his group. The bodyguard was frustrated after Seo Arin tripped, which allowed their pursuers to close the distance. Ryumin's group demanded the bodyguard hand over Seo Arin, but the bodyguard refused and took a defensive stance, more afraid of disobeying his boss, the Heavenly Demon, than of facing them. Just then, Black Scythe arrived from the side. He stepped in to protect Seo Arin and her bodyguard, not out of pity, but because he recognized them. And more importantly, because he wanted the Heavenly Demon to owe him a favor. Ryumin hesitated for a moment, but eventually stepped forward, confident in his newly enhanced strength, and challenged Black Scythe. He tried to close the distance and land a punch straight to Black Scythe's face, but it was pointless. Black Scythe struck first. Ryumin still attempted to throw a punch, but Black Scythe dodged it with ease, then landed a solid kick to Ryumin's stomach, bringing him to his knees. Right after that, Black Scythe kicked Ryumin in the head once more, then began beating him relentlessly. Suddenly, one of Ryumin's teammates tried to attack Black Scythe from behind with a bow and arrow, but Black Scythe dodged the shot effortlessly and immediately rushed toward the archer. Without hesitation, he sliced off the archer's arm with his massive scythe. Ryumin's other teammates quickly took their stances, ready to attack. Then, the bald guy charged at Black Scythe, but Black Scythe swiftly used his Insignia of Death skill and slashed through the man's legs, crippling him. As for the last remaining teammate, Black Scythe simply cut off his hand, just like he did with the archer. Taking them all down was nothing for Black Scythe, whose strength was far above average. At that moment, Ryumin, who had been hiding and watching his teammates get destroyed, was spotted by Black Scythe. Without a word, Black Scythe sliced Ryumin's hand, just like the others, because to him, that pain was nothing compared to the bullying Ryumin used to put him through back in school. Afterward, Seo Arin's bodyguard thanked Black Scythe for saving both him and Seo Arin from Ryumin's group. Seo Arin expressed concern that Ryumin's group might die, but Black Scythe coldly replied, "So what if they die? They're not even on the same level as animals." The bodyguard asked, "Why did you spare them then?" Black Scythe answered, "There's nothing to gain from killing them." The bodyguard followed up, "What if they cause trouble later?" Black Scythe smirked, "Trouble? Do you think these guys are even capable of causing trouble?" The bodyguard then offered to send compensation in the real world and asked for Black Scythe's account number, but Black Scythe refused and simply walked away. Seo Arin and her bodyguard also left, but not before the bodyguard spat on Ryumin one last time. Meanwhile, chaos was erupting elsewhere, as people were arguing and fighting over who should be chosen as the regional representative. Everyone was nominating themselves, until a player nicknamed Mint Chocolate Boy arrived and started brainwashing everyone into voting for him using a persuasion rune. At first, Chocolate Boy thought the rune he received was useless, but once he tried it on others and saw it actually made people follow his commands, he kept using it repeatedly, manipulating more and more people to vote for him. Then suddenly, a player named Life is a Documentary, who ranked a number 2 in the zone, showed up, furious that Chocolate Boy was trying to control the outcome. He called him a manipulator, but instead of backing down, Chocolate Boy mocked the rank 2 player, and that was a mistake. Rank 2 snapped and slit Chocolate Boy's throat with a knife. He then threatened everyone, saying they had to vote for him as the regional representative, or he'd kill them too. Someone tried to stand up to him, but was immediately slaughtered just like that. After witnessing the brutal execution, no one else dared oppose him. The rank 2 player was desperate to become the representative because he wanted to kill Black Scythe and claim the #1 spot in the zone. Meanwhile, Black Scythe continued hunting monsters and had now reached level 16. His level skyrocketed because he had killed 265 monsters, far exceeding the 100 monster goal. On top of that, he had a 3x EXP buff active, along with the Reaper rune and Butcher rune, which doubled both his weapon damage and stats. Finally, the quest timer ended, and it was time to vote for the regional representative. All players were summoned back to the starting point of round 2. After all the chaos during the discussion, the voting session finally began. Everyone from across the arena was summoned to the starting point to cast their votes and decide who would represent their region. At the starting point, there were countless corpses lying around, victims of Cho Jung-sik, also known by his nickname, Life is a Documentary. It seemed those corpses belonged to people who had refused to support Cho Jung-sik as their representative. Seeing this brutal scene, Black Scythe already suspected that Cho Jung-sik would win this conflict again, just like in the previous regressions he had experienced. Knowing how twisted Cho Jung-sik's personality was, Black Scythe began planning to kill him, believing he was a ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. However, now wasn't the right time. He'd wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. As soon as Cho Jung-sik saw Black Scythe had arrived at the starting point, he approached him with hidden intentions. He wanted to recruit him, but seeing how confident Cho Jung-sik was, Black Scythe simply laughed and told him to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness, saying that was the only way he'd survive. Provoked by Black Scythe's words, Cho Jung-sik lost his temper, thinking Black Scythe still didn't understand the situation. But when he kept spouting nonsense, Black Scythe pulled out his massive scythe to intimidate him. The moment Cho Jung-sik saw that terrifying weapon, fear struck him. He knew he had just angered the wrong person. Still, despite his fear, Cho Jung-sik tried to stay composed and kept provoking Black Scythe, hoping to draw him into a fight. However, Black Scythe held back. He wasn't going to fight Cho Jung-sik just yet. He had plans to use him in the 3rd round, especially since, in that moment, a goddess was about to appear. When the goddess arrived, it asked whether the people had chosen a representative for their region. The goddess then started the 5-minute voting session, warning that anyone who failed to vote within the time limit would be eliminated and killed. Unexpectedly, everyone's eyes were on Cho Jung-sik when it came time to vote. Seeing this, he grew even more confident and shouted that anyone who didn't vote for him would be killed. The voting ended and the goddess displayed the results. As expected, Cho Jung-sik ranked first, while Black Scythe came in second, making Cho Jung-sik the official representative of the region. With that, the goddess granted him the authority of command, but unexpectedly the skill came with a major drawback. It could only be used 10 times, and it wouldn't work on players who already had a class, like Black Scythe. Then came a shocking twist. Just when everyone thought the voting was the end of it, the goddess issued a secret quest for the players to earn advanced items and classes. To everyone's surprise, someone had already advanced to a class within that region, and that player was none other than Black Scythe. The moment that was revealed, everyone in the region was stunned. Once again, Black Scythe had taken the #1 spot across the entire zone. People began to wonder what kind of class Reaper really was, assuming it had to be insanely powerful. Meanwhile, Cho Jung-sik, who had planned to kill Black Scythe using the authority of command, was crushed. His plan was now useless, since the skill didn't work on someone who had already gained a class. The goddess, amazed to see Black Scythe ranked first across the entire region, was impressed by his performance. Curious, the goddess asked why he chose that nickname, since it perfectly matched the class he now possessed. The goddess then asked if Black Scythe had known beforehand how to obtain the Reaper class. Casually, Black Scythe replied that even he had no idea how he ended up with a class that matched his nickname so well. Hearing this, the goddess assumed it must have been fate. But in truth, even the goddesses didn't know how to acquire the Reaper class, since it was part of the rare and mysterious unique class category. Surprised that someone in this region had already changed classes, the goddess explained that players who already had a class would be completely unaffected by the authority of command skill given to the regional representative. Hearing this, Cho Jung-sik was visibly annoyed. The weakness of his skill had just been revealed to everyone. As the top-ranked player, Black Scythe received 2 rewards. One of them was the right to choose a low-tier armor from a golden chest, which contained 3 options. He selected the first one, believing it would come in handy in round 3. Once everyone received their rewards, they were allowed to return home and wait for the next call, round 3. After returning, Seo Arin, a beautiful celebrity who had previously been saved by Black Scythe, wished to meet him in person and thank him directly. Unfortunately, no one knew Black Scythe's real identity in the real world, and it seemed he had no intention of revealing it either. Arin's bodyguard then suggested she thank him in the next round and offer him an item as a token of gratitude. Shortly after stepping outside, the bodyguard received a call from the person he served, President Ma. President Ma asked if anything unusual had happened in round 2. The bodyguard replied that he had been injured during the round, and it involved Black Scythe. Hearing that, President Ma immediately ordered him to come to the hotel so he could hear everything in detail. While waiting for the bodyguard to arrive, President Ma seemed to misunderstand the situation. He assumed Black Scythe was the one who had hurt Aaron and the bodyguard, and he was already planning to confront him, even if Black Scythe was the #1 ranked player. Eventually, the bodyguard arrived at the hotel. Once there, he congratulated President Ma for all his achievements during round 2. Then he asked a question that had been on his mind: how did President Ma obtain an advancement item? President Ma answered that he got it while hunting monsters. But in reality, he had received the advancement item through the Dark Knight rune, which he had obtained from a random rune fragment. He didn't share the truth with the bodyguard because, even though he saw him as family, he believed some information was too valuable to reveal. People could change at any moment after all. That's just human nature. Without wasting any more time, President Ma asked the bodyguard who had hurt him. Still assuming it was Black Scythe, President Ma was surprised when the bodyguard quickly denied it and explained that Black Scythe had actually saved them. Taken aback, President Ma asked for a full explanation. After hearing the whole story, President Ma felt indebted to Black Scythe for saving his most trusted subordinate and the most important person in his business, Aaron. When he suggested offering a reward to Black Scythe, the bodyguard said he had already refused it. This made President Ma think that Black Scythe must be extremely cautious and careful about protecting his identity. In the end, President Ma ordered the bodyguard to deliver a message of thanks to Black Scythe for saving both of them, and to always keep an eye on him in case he ever needed help. Before Aaron's bodyguard left, President Ma asked him one last question, with a face full of vengeance. What were the nicknames of those thugs? Meanwhile, Ryumin, who had already confirmed where the bodyguard was headed, returned home. On the way back, Ryumin thought about using his good relationship with the bodyguard and Aaron, although he was still unsure whether he should bring President Ma into round 20 or not. After all, the Dark Knight rune that President Ma had was powerful. Some would even call it broken. But its biggest drawback lay in the Dark Knight's core power, Dark Aura, which could only be fueled by a special mana called Dark Mana. The only way to acquire it was by killing others and absorbing their dark mana. In other words, that power was frighteningly well suited for a psychopath like President Ma. The scene then shifts to a supermarket. There, the store owner let out a sigh. His income had been dropping. Not long after, a beautiful young woman entered. It was his daughter, Julie. Julie asked her father why he sighed, and he explained that lottery ticket sales had been suspended by the government. Worried about him, Julie tried to reassure her father that she'd be graduating soon and would start helping him from now on. But her father, concerned for her future, urged her to just focus on school and pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. Julie responded by questioning the importance of dreams in times like these, where survival was all that mattered. Hearing that, her father fell silent and apologized for being in such a fragile mental state. Julie then used a skill, Bless, which boosted all stats. The effect was instant and her father's body felt revitalized again. Not long after, Ryumin entered the supermarket. Julie quietly asked her father if he recognized him. Her father answered that he was the lottery winner. Ryumin walked up to Julie's father and asked if he still remembered him. The man said yes and asked what brought Ryumin here. Without hesitation, Ryumin apologized for always placing first in the rankings, which, in turn, led the government to ban lottery sales. Shocked, Julie's father quickly forgave him, saying it wasn't his fault. Still feeling guilty, Ryumin pulled out a stack of cash, worth 10 million won, and offered it as compensation. Julie's father was stunned and tried to refuse, saying Ryumin wasn't to blame. But Ryumin insisted, saying he still felt responsible for the trouble. He left the money on the counter and walked away without waiting for a response. Now holding the cash, Julie's father panicked, unsure of what to do. Julie, thinking fast, took the money and ran after Ryumin to return it. Little did she know, Ryumin already recognized her, not just as the store owner's daughter, but also as his classmate, and someone with a unique class, just like him. Her class was Buffer. It turned out Ryumin had intentionally approached her while pretending not to know her, to slowly draw her to his side. Julie caught up to him and led him to a nearby park, where she returned the money, but Ryumin still refused to take it back. Changing the subject, Ryumin tried to make conversation, because in his previous regression, he had already gotten to know her. He eventually asked for Julie's number, so they could stay in contact. Julie, surprised and blushing, gave him her number. Ryumin left shortly after, saying he had something important to take care of. Realizing the money was still with her, Julie shouted after him, but Ryumin clearly had no intention of taking it back. Julie, still flustered from Ryumin asking for her number, could feel her heart racing, even though she knew he probably meant it in a friendly way. She couldn't help but enjoy the moment. She then recalled the first time she met Ryumin when she stumbled upon him being bullied by a group of students. Without hesitation, she had called the police to report the situation. At first, Julie was confused about her feelings. Was it sympathy, or was it guilt for reporting what happened to him? But over time, she found herself watching Ryumin from afar more and more, slowly realizing that he was much stronger than he looked. What started as simple curiosity gradually turned into genuine interest. Unfortunately, Julie didn't have the courage to talk to him, so those feelings only grew stronger day by day. Who would have thought that now, she and Ryumin would not only meet again, but even exchange phone numbers? After that encounter, Julie made up her mind. She wanted to be brave enough to talk to Ryumin more, and even planned to ask him out for a meal. Later at home, Ryumin was seen chatting with Julie. In their conversation, it seemed like Julie invited him to lunch, and while chatting, Ryumin quietly thought to himself that he wanted to protect her and bring her safely to round 20. By lunchtime, Ryumin had already gotten ready to meet Julie. His younger brother, who was watching TV, noticed him getting dressed and asked where he was going. Ryumin casually replied that he was going to have lunch with a female friend. Hearing that, his sister immediately assumed he was going on a date. When they arrived at the lunch spot, Julie had chosen a steak restaurant, but because she was too nervous to speak, the atmosphere quickly became awkward. After calming herself, Julie finally mustered the courage to ask Ryumin a question. As the mood became more relaxed, she asked about Ryumin's first round, specifically which region he had been assigned to. When Ryumin said he was in a region ending with the number 5, Julie looked disappointed. She was in a region ending with 7, so they wouldn't be able to meet in-game. But there was no need to worry. As the number of survivors decreased over time, regions would eventually merge, and players from different regions would be able to meet. Julie then asked a few more questions, like Ryumin's level and class, but Ryumin appeared to lie, still hiding his identity as Black Scythe. When he asked what class Julie had, he was relieved to hear it was still the same as in his previous regression. Ryumin pretended not to know what a buffer was, so Julie offered to give him a buff. To his surprise, the effect of Julie's buff was insane. It boosted the target's stats by 50% for 3 hours. After they chatted for a while, Julie once again thanked him for the money he gave her father, but knowing Ryumin would probably never accept repayment, she instead handed him a purple crystal as a token of gratitude. After their lunch together, Ryumin immediately examined the crystal Julie gave him, and he was stunned. It was a magic crystal that could boost all stats. Once a player reached level 20, they unlocked a feature called Combination, which allowed them to fuse their weapons with magic crystals. Magic crystals came in 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, light blue, dark blue, and purple. Each color served a different purpose. Red increased damage, orange boosted strength, yellow raised luck, green enhanced dexterity, light blue increased intelligence, dark blue reduced incoming damage, and finally, purple, the rarest of them all, because of its incredibly low drop rate. Feeling extremely lucky, Ryumin decided it was the perfect time to use his gold pouch, a reward item that generated a large amount of gold. Thanks to Julie's buff, his luck stat was at its peak, and sure enough, something incredible happened. Ryumin had hit the maximum amount of gold, 9,999 in a single use, all thanks to the luck buff Julie had given him. With that, Ryumin's total gold soared to 16,249. As soon as Ryumin got home, his younger brother rushed over and immediately asked how his date went. But Ryumin brushed her off and quickly changed the subject, asking if she'd had lunch yet. Ryumin, who had a Bitcoin investment worth $150 million, was now planning to sell it off and buy a Lamborghini Aventador once he got his driver's license. 2 weeks later, he sold his Bitcoin and made $300 million from the transaction. Now with a massive profit in hand, Ryumin had his eyes set on investing in a company ranked 85th called Heavenly Demon Consulting, which was valued at $900 million. Though not very well known yet, this company was owned by none other than President Ma, the Heavenly Demon himself. After round 4, this company would go on to create a special system and experience massive growth, one of the key reasons Ryumin chose to invest now. He wanted not just a large shareholding, but also operational control. For the first stage, Ryumin planned to invest $280 million, purchasing 31% ownership of the company. Later that night, on the same day, Ryumin opened the in-game shop to purchase an item he had been eyeing for a while, the skeletal necklace, an item that boosted both intelligence and attack speed, and considering its effects, it was surprisingly affordable. After buying everything he needed, Ryumin still had a good amount of gold left. With just 6,000 more gold, he could afford to buy several common skills. So he made it a goal to quickly earn that gold, and fortunately, in the upcoming 3rd round, there would be plenty of monsters to hunt. Time flew by, and the day finally came when all players were summoned to begin round 3. This time, players didn't spawn in a forest, but in a small village surrounded by walls. In the center of the village stood a giant purple crystal, leaving many players anxious and confused about what they were supposed to do. Among the crowd was Cho Jung-sik, the region's representative. Some players had already started talking about him, no longer fearing him the way they once did, especially after the goddess revealed the weakness of his authority of command skill. Many even regretted voting for him as their representative. Hearing the whispers, Cho Jung-sik lost his temper and yelled at the others in anger. As his emotions flared, Yongmin approached and greeted him warmly, clearly trying to win favor and join his gang. Confused, Cho Jung-sik asked why Yongmin wanted to join him. Yongmin then knelt down, pledged his loyalty, and begged to be accepted. Impressed by his determination, Cho Jung-sik welcomed him as a subordinate. From a distance, Black Scythe watched it all unfold. It was exactly what he remembered from his previous regression. Soon after, the goddess appeared, tasked with overseeing round 3. And shortly after she arrived, the main quest was announced. To everyone's shock, only 1,225 players would be able to complete it. This sent the players into a panic. Many thought it had to be a mistake, but the goddess only laughed hysterically, revealing that from the start, her goal was to eliminate half the players with each round. She then explained the rules for round 3. monsters would spawn from the castle gates every 30 minutes, targeting the relic located at the center of the village. There would be 4 total waves, and everyone was required to cooperate and defend the relic. Those who could survive for 3 full hours would receive rewards. Finally, the player's success would be judged based on the number of monsters defeated. And just before leaving, the goddess dropped one more bombshell, this time about the regional representatives. She explained, if a representative died, whether by monsters or any other cause, the position would become vacant, but if a player killed the representative, that player would immediately take their place and inherit the full power of the authority of command. Hearing the goddess's words, the players immediately turned their eyes toward Cho Jung-sik, now with murderous intent. Jung-sik, in response, shouted back, threatening to kill anyone who dared come near him with the intent to take his life. Seeing the chaos unfold, Black Scythe approached Jung-sik, wanting to talk to him, since his situation was clearly becoming troublesome. To everyone's surprise, Black Scythe actually offered to protect Jung-sik. Jung-sik was stunned by the sudden offer and stood silently, confused. Black Scythe calmly explained that if he protected Jung-sik, no one would dare target him, but that would also mean Black Scythe would be fully responsible for guarding him. Their conversation made the surrounding players hesitate to attack, because going after Jung-sik would now mean facing Black Scythe as well. Realizing how beneficial this offer was, Jung-sik started to grow suspicious. He was sure Black Scythe wouldn't offer something like this for free, so he asked, "What do you want in return?" Black Scythe replied, "All I ask is that you follow my every command." Jung-sik was taken aback. The condition hit him hard, because agreeing to it would basically mean becoming Black Scythe's subordinate. He was torn. Accept the deal and lose his pride, or reject it and be hunted by the other players. After a moment of silence, Jung-sik made his decision. He rejected Black Scythe's offer, but Black Scythe had already expected this outcome. There was no way someone like Jung-sik would throw away his pride so easily. To shake him up a little, Black Scythe coldly said, "Fine, die if you want. Whether you live or die is none of my concern." Those words only made the other players even more eager to kill Cho Jung-sik. Meanwhile, Jung-sik, triggered by Black Scythe's harsh words, began rethinking his decision. Suddenly, the first monster wave began. 9,800 weakened goblins emerged. Panicked, Jung-sik rushed toward the area where Black Scythe was fighting. From atop a rooftop, he watched Black Scythe in action. At first, he scoffed, thinking Black Scythe was just acting tough because he had a higher level. Jung-sik assumed he'd flee once things got serious, but to his shock, Black Scythe easily crushed the goblins, one after another. Witnessing such overwhelming strength made Jung-sik determined to farm as much EXP as possible, hoping to level up quickly. However, in the middle of fighting goblins, Jung-sik forgot something critical. He wasn't just being targeted by monsters, other players were also after him. While fending off goblins, someone aimed to strike at his head from an unknown direction. Then, another player suddenly stabbed him with a spear. Surprisingly, Jung-sik survived the ambush, though badly wounded. Now desperate, he looked for a way to stay alive without asking Black Scythe for help. That's when he spotted the number 3 ranked player in their region, a player known by the nickname Black Dragon in my right arm. Seeing the golden opportunity, Jung-sik quickly asked him for protection. Meanwhile, Black Scythe, still surrounded by goblins, had already earned a ton of EXP and gathered 2,000 gold. Now, with 15,000 gold total, he only needed 5,000 more to hit 20,000 gold, enough to buy 2 common skills and receive a rune. After a fierce and exhausting battle, the first wave finally ended, leaving 3,933 players still standing. Despite being targeted by both goblins and hostile players, Cho Jung-sik somehow survived. But it wasn't thanks to his own strength. He was saved by the allies who stuck with him, Ryumin and the number 3 ranked player. Even with their help, Jung-sik was still in rough shape, his body battered from the injuries he sustained during the first wave, especially those caused by other players. Not long after the first wave ended, the second wave began. As expected of Black Scythe, he effortlessly slaughtered the goblins and reached level 20 during this wave. Upon hitting level 20, Black Scythe unlocked several benefits, including a new feature called Combination, and more importantly, he acquired an exclusive skill, Night of Death, which perfectly synergized with his Rune Reaper. After testing out his new skill, the second wave ended just as swiftly as it began. With enough gold collected, Black Scythe opened the shop and purchased the common skill he'd been aiming for, Presence Detection. With this new skill, he could now hunt goblins more efficiently, as it allowed him to detect every target within a 30-meter radius. As time went on, the third and fourth waves were cleared, and there was only 1 hour left until the quest for this third round would end. But then came the fifth wave, and the players were caught off guard. This time, they had to face a much stronger enemy, 10,800 gnolls, who were far tougher than the goblins from previous waves. Cho Jung-sik, overwhelmed by how much harder things had become, finally gave in and asked Black Scythe to protect him. But shockingly, Black Scythe rejected his request. He said he had no need for someone who didn't even know how to use the authority of command. Feeling hopeless, Jung-sik was then called over by Ryumin, who told him he'd help. Relieved to have someone on his side, Jung-sik let his guard down. But then, the unexpected happened. Ryumin betrayed him. It turned out Ryumin never intended to serve under Jungsik. His real plan was to kill him and take his position as the regional representative. After eliminating the previous representative, Ryumin automatically became the new one, and with that, he gained the authority of command skill. Now, holding that power, Ryumin had dark intentions. He wanted to control Seo Arin however he pleased. As the new representative, Ryumin immediately approached Black Scythe, ready to accept his earlier offer. At first, Black Scythe rejected Ryumin as well, but when Ryumin obeyed his command and kneeled, begging for protection, Black Scythe decided that he might be somewhat useful, unlike Cho Jungsik. Eventually, Black Scythe accepted Ryumin's request for protection. Seeing this, the other players were too afraid to attack Ryumin anymore. With things settling down, Black Scythe suddenly gave an unexpected order. He told Ryumin to use all of his authority of command to destroy the relic that the players were supposed to protect. Ryumin was shocked and hesitant. If he used up all his authority of command now, he'd lose his chance to enslave Seo Arin later. But Black Scythe wasn't done. He also ordered Ryumin to use 10 of his authority of command points on all of his own allies. With no other choice, Ryumin complied. He used his authority of command to order his teammates to destroy the relic. The other players, alarmed by the sudden notification that the relic was under attack, shouted for them to stop. But it was pointless, because the authority of command was absolute and couldn't be overridden. Soon after the relic was destroyed, the players were hit with a massive penalty. They now had to withstand the wrath of the proxy of divine retribution, which would be summoned for 30 minutes. It turns out that destroying the relic was part of Black Scythe's plan all along, to trigger a hidden sub-quest, survive against the proxy of divine retribution, and earn 3,000 gold. Seeing that the reward was far more tempting than the main quest, most players were actually pleased. But that joy didn't extend to Ryumin and his teammates. Instead, they were hit with a harsh penalty, a permanent stat reduction. In a survival-based world like this, that kind of punishment is devastating. Meanwhile, Black Scythe began preparing to face the proxy of divine retribution. Using the extra gold he had gathered, he bought a few basic items. He also used the combination feature to upgrade his equipment. As the atmosphere grew tense with the imminent arrival of the proxy, everyone started getting ready, some even planning to run away. But escaping from the proxy of divine retribution isn't easy. It's a monster capable of wiping out even level 40 players without breaking a sweat. Still, Black Scythe had a plan, not just to survive, but to kill the proxy and claim the reward. His secret weapon? A special title, the First Angel Slayer. After defeating a goddess in the first round, he earned this title, which grants a massive advantage. It doubles all stats when fighting divine-type creatures. And as you might have guessed, the proxy of divine retribution is exactly that, a divine-type monster. Not long after, the proxy of divine retribution appeared. At first, the players underestimated it based on its appearance, but once the proxy cast Restriction Field, trapping everyone inside with no way to escape, panic set in. Anyone caught within the field had their stats reduced by 50%. And the proxy didn't stop there. It cast another spell, summoning a barrage of spears that rained down on the players trapped inside. From outside the field, Black Scythe looked away. What he saw was a massacre. Dodging in there was nearly impossible. With the proxy fully focused on hunting the players, Black Scythe seized the opportunity. He approached from behind, looking for an opening. Once close enough, he activated the insignia of death and launched a direct attack, straight into its eye. The attack, enhanced by the insignia, reduced the proxy's stamina to just 60%. Wounded, the proxy tried to cast Restriction Field again, this time to trap Black Scythe. But with one eye already destroyed, Black Scythe immediately targeted the remaining one. And once both eyes were gone, the proxy's attack skills became useless. It could no longer see. Standing right behind it, Black Scythe activated his ultimate move, Night of Death, aiming to end the fight. The proxy, now down to just 10% health and missing both wings, was desperate. It activated a troublesome passive skill, Last Radiant Flare, which made it completely invulnerable for 1 minute. Black Scythe waited from a distance, watching its final struggle, and as soon as the invincibility wore off, he struck again, landing the final blow. The proxy of divine retribution was defeated. As a result, Black Scythe leveled up 3 times, received 8,200 gold, and earned an extra 4,000 gold. But that wasn't all. He also obtained the title, the Opposer of Divine Punishment, a condensed ether, and a Rune of Radiance. With the proxy defeated, the hidden sub-quest was completed, and all players were awarded 3,000 gold. The goddess appeared shortly after and acknowledged Black Scythe's strength. She then asked why he wanted to kill the proxy in the first place. But Black Scythe, thinking it was a pointless question, gave only a brief answer. Then came the evaluation phase. As usual, Black Scythe ranked first across all regions, with a solo kill count of 3,631. The player count check began. Just like the goddess had said at the start, only 1,225 players would move on to the next round. Hearing this, many panicked, especially those who hadn't killed enough monsters and now faced elimination. At last, the third round ended, and they returned to the real world. Seo Arin woke up to find she had received the Summoner class and could now summon a fairy. Not only that, she ranked 3rd overall and received a purple crystal, which she planned to give to Black Scythe. Meanwhile, Youngmin had just returned when he received a call from his friends who had been forced to obey the authority of command. Over the phone, they blamed him for using that authority on them and ordering them to destroy the relic, calling him a traitor. Youngmin defended himself, saying he had no other choice, but deep down, he also felt like a victim. Later that afternoon at the hotel, Aren's bodyguard reported everything that had happened during the third round to President Ma. He also mentioned that he had received the night class and that Seo Aren had become a summoner. Upon hearing this, President Ma told the bodyguard to maintain a close relationship with Aren. He even jokingly suggested dating her, but the bodyguard clearly felt uncomfortable with the idea. Thankfully, President Ma was only teasing and didn't mean it seriously. Back to the main topic, the bodyguard apologized for failing the mission President Ma had assigned, delivering a greeting and a thank you to Black Scythe. However, he explained the circumstances behind the failure, and President Ma was understanding, saying it was fine. After hearing the full report about the third round, President Ma became even more eager to meet Black Scythe if the opportunity ever arose. Once the debriefing ended, he immediately asked about the progress in tracking Youngmin. The bodyguard replied that it would take around a month to trace him, since there were likely many users with the same nickname. Lastly, the bodyguard informed President Ma that someone had purchased a large amount of his company's stock just last month. This surprised President Ma. Who in the world had that kind of money? He immediately asked for the buyer's contact information. Back to Ryumin, who was lying on his bed, when he suddenly received a phone call from an unknown number. To his surprise, it was President Ma. Even more unexpectedly, President Ma invited him out for a meal on Friday. Since Ryumin wasn't available that day, he suggested meeting on Saturday instead. President Ma gladly agreed. Then, on Friday night, Ryumin was seen waiting inside an empty warehouse for someone named Jang Seo-kyun. That just happened to be the name behind the same nickname. Ryumin had a dark history with this man from a previous regression. Jang Seo-kyun had once kidnapped Ryumin's younger brother after discovering Ryumin was a regressor. He also possessed the Rune of Inner Thoughts, a dangerous rune that allows its user to read minds. Ever since then, in every regression, Ryumin made it a point to take revenge on him, but by his 11th regression, Ryumin no longer felt any emotional grudge. Now, his goal was simple, to get the Rune of Inner Thoughts before Jang Seo-kyun could. A few moments later, Jang Seo-kyun arrived, carrying a woman slung over his shoulder. It looked like he had just kidnapped her. The reason he abducted the woman seemed to be because she had looked at him in a way he found insulting. Despite her repeated apologies, Jang Seo-kyun ignored her completely. He even went as far as attempting to assault her, until Ryumin stepped in and provoked him. Seeing the perfect opening, Ryumin launched a direct attack at Jang Seo-kyun's lower body, instantly rendering him helpless. While Seo-kyun was down, Ryumin told the woman to run away. Once she was gone, Ryumin turned his attention back to Seo-kyun, clearly planning to do something more. Humiliated and enraged, Jang Seo-kyun tried to fight back, but Ryumin effortlessly dodged every strike. Noticing that Seo-kyun was still using a low-grade goblin dagger, Ryumin slashed his wrist with his massive scythe, severing his hand. Seo-kyun let out a scream of agony. Without hesitation, Ryumin cut off his other hand as well. As Jang Seo-kyun's vision blurred and his rage boiled over, he attempted to use a skill that would blind Ryumin, but the skill failed to activate, causing Seo-kyun to panic. Turns out, the reason his skill didn't work was because Ryumin had Night of Death, a skill that's completely immune to all forms of light. With Seo-kyun's skill rendered useless, Ryumin mercilessly severed both of his ankles, beginning a brutal, drawn-out torture session. After enduring such cruelty, Jang Seo-kyun tried to end it all by committing suicide. But Ryumin wasn't going to let him off that easily. When Seo-kyun finally begged Ryumin to kill him, Ryumin calmly explained why he had gone so far, to make Seo-kyun beg. Because that was one of the conditions required to obtain the Rune of Inner Thoughts, exactly what Ryumin was aiming for. And in the end, even after getting what he needed, Ryumin had no intention of finishing him off. He left Seo-kyun to die slowly and painfully on his own. Eventually, Jang Seo-kyun died in a miserable state. Ryumin then used erasy traces to wipe away any evidence of what had happened. Now that he had acquired the Rune of Inner Thoughts, Ryumin made plans to meet with President Ma the following day. Ryumin was already dressed up, wearing a suit. His younger brother, noticing how neat he looked, assumed Ryumin was going on a date. But Ryumin told him he had a business matter to attend to. Hearing that, his brother became a little anxious, worried that his brother might fail. Ryumin reassured him, saying there was no need to worry. He just needed to trust his big brother. His brother responded that he did trust Ryumin, because he was the only one he could trust. As Ryumin walked to the door, his brother mentioned how things were getting bad overseas, with many criminals escaping using the powers they had gained. Ryumin agreed, saying it was true. Criminals could become players too, as long as they were old enough. Players were growing stronger, and with the population shrinking every month, it would be stranger if things didn't change. Eventually, a time would come when ordinary people would be hunted like animals and treated as slaves. That's why Ryumin planned to become incredibly strong and raise Black Scythe's reputation, all to take control of everything. Before leaving, he told his brother to be careful if he ever went outside. His brother then asked when Ryumin would finally tell him what his business was about. Ryumin replied, "That's a secret, just wait. I'll tell you soon." Ryumin then arrived at the hotel where he was supposed to meet President Ma. He approached the receptionist and was told to wait a moment, as President Ma would be arriving shortly. Soon after, Sang-chul, the head of the department, came to meet Ryumin and apologized for how he had treated him before at their previous hotel encounter. Apparently they had met before, and Sang-chul had been rude back then. Ryumin forgave him, and Sang-chul led him to a private room, asking him to wait again. Once outside, Sang-chul informed President Ma that Ryumin didn't look like a proper investor and advised him to be cautious. He suspected Ryumin might be acting under someone else's orders. Not long after, President Ma arrived and greeted Ryumin. Ryumin figured the president must be trying to make a move in secret, bringing Sang-chul along without letting Ryumin know ahead of time. Then, President Ma called in the staff to bring food, and they started eating together. During the meal, President Ma agreed with Sang-chul's earlier point that Ryumin didn't seem like someone who could invest a large sum into the company. He was too young and didn't give off the vibe of a serious investor. The president asked Ryumin how old he was. Ryumin replied, 20. President Ma was visibly surprised and asked how someone his age could possibly have so much money. Ryumin explained that he had won the lottery 4 times in a row and had invested the money into Bitcoin, which is how he ended up with such a large fortune. Sang-chul commented that Ryumin must be incredibly lucky to win the lottery that many times. But Ryumin corrected him, saying it wasn't luck. The rumors about him getting the winning numbers from a dream were false. He revealed that he had a skill, one that allowed him to see the future. President Ma was stunned, while Sang-chul couldn't bring himself to believe what Ryumin had just said. Ryumin insisted he wasn't lying. The reason he dared to invest in Bitcoin and ended up making so much money was because he could see the future. President Ma responded, "If you don't mind, why don't you prove it by predicting what I'm about to do next?" But Ryumin explained that his skill couldn't be used freely, for certain reasons. That's when President Ma realized that Ryumin must have a specific reason for choosing to invest in his company. Ryumin confirmed it, saying that in the future, the company would grow tremendously. That's why he wanted to invest. Hearing this made President Ma happy, but he still wasn't fully convinced. Words alone weren't enough. There was no guarantee Ryumin was telling the truth. Ryumin then told him that to succeed, he needed to change the company's entire business model. Hearing this, Sang-chul grew furious and slammed the table. The atmosphere grew tense. Ryumin kept trying to convince President Ma, but Sang-chul refused to believe anything he said, especially the part about changing the business model and even the company name. Ryumin then revealed that his decision to move into the unit below where Seo Arin lived wasn't a coincidence. It was intentional. President Ma started thinking deeply. And thanks to his ability to read emotions, Ryumin could tell that the president still didn't trust him. So Ryumin dropped a bombshell. He revealed President Ma's secret, that he was the eldest son of the Osung Group's chairman, and that this company was actually a secret project to earn his father's recognition. Sang-chul jumped up, furious at Ryumin's words, but President Ma didn't deny it. He admitted it was true, but still hesitated. He worried that Ryumin might be a plant, someone sent by a third party to set him up. Since he hadn't gained the president's full trust yet, Ryumin finally decided to share something big. He told them about the upcoming 4th round. After the meeting, Sang-chul apologized to President Ma for letting his emotions get the best of him. They then discussed Ryumin. If he turned out to be trustworthy, President Ma said, they had to make sure to recruit him. Meanwhile, Ryumin walked away from the meeting, thinking to himself that after the 4th round, President Ma would believe him for sure. Later, Ryumin arranged to meet up with Julie. He waited in front of her shop, and when she came out, he called to her and suggested they talk while walking. As they walked, Julie asked how much his car cost. Ryumin casually replied, about 900 million won. Julie was shocked. If she had that kind of money, she said, she could open several convenience stores. Ryumin shrugged it off, saying that was just a small portion of the money he'd earned from winning the lottery. Julie commented that they really lived in 2 different worlds, but she was still happy. In fact, she even thought this kind of felt like a date. Suddenly, Ryumin said he had something to tell her. Julie froze, her mind jumping to weird conclusions. But Ryumin quickly clarified. It wasn't anything strange. What he wanted to say was that he was a fortune teller, someone who could see the future. The two of them ended up talking about their respective abilities, even though Ryumin's so-called skill wasn't actually his real one. He also told Julie about the 4th round. Cut to Ryumin's room. Here, Ryumin realized something. Julie had feelings for him. He felt a little embarrassed, but also figured it might make things easier when working with her as a teammate. Time passed quickly, and now it was the last day of March. That meant the 4th round for players was just around the corner. Ryumin had already made plenty of preparations, including gathering gear and supplies. Then, his younger brother came into the room and asked if Ryumin would be able to survive this next round. He was clearly worried about his brother, but Ryumin told him not to talk like that. Finally, the 4th round began. All the players were transported to the test area. We immediately cut to Ryumin, who was fuming. He'd been given a penalty. Looking around the all-white space, Ryumin began to wonder, where are we? He started to imagine what kind of test awaited him this time. Ryumin then looked over at Black Scythe, still feeling bitter toward him because of the previous trial. But with no other choice, he approached Black Scythe and brought up the agreement they made last time. where Black Scythe was supposed to protect him. But Black Scythe quickly shut him down, saying he didn't need subordinates like Ryumin anymore since he had lost the authority of command. Besides, now that some players had already acquired classes, having that skill was useless anyway. Black Scythe went on to say that at this point, Ryumin was worthless, just a walking target. Ryumin grew nervous and looked around, but Black Scythe reassured him, saying he didn't need to worry. Not many would come after him since they understood the risks of becoming a regional representative. The more people grew stronger, the fewer there were who could be controlled. Just then, Seo Arin and Sangchul arrived to thank Black Scythe and handed him a purple crystal. Black Scythe had no reason to refuse, so he accepted the item right away. Seo Arin thought the stone was useless since she didn't know what it was for, but Black Scythe knew exactly how valuable it was. Ryumin, seeing the stone, suddenly remembered he had one just like it. In his mind, he recalled the name, Black Gold Strength Stone. It was a rare item that only dropped from monsters and was incredibly hard to find. Upon realizing this, Black Scythe immediately began plotting to take it from him. Black Scythe then told Ryumin he'd help him avoid becoming an easy target, but it wouldn't be for free. In exchange, Ryumin had to give him an item like the one Seo Arin gave. Without thinking twice and still unaware of its value, Ryumin handed over his rare item. Right after Black Scythe received it, the goddess appeared and announced the quest for round 4. The objective? Everyone had to kill each other for the next 3 hours. Chaos followed. People were confused and began asking for more details, but the goddess said it was all a secret. Revealing everything up front would ruin the fun. In truth, she didn't even know the exact details herself. Her job was just to relay the basic information. Once the explanation was over, the quest began. Elsewhere, Ryumin was actually happy about the task. Since they had to kill each other, he planned to go after his so-called friends, seeking revenge. But suddenly, Black Scythe approached him and drew his scythe. Without hesitation, Black Scythe killed Ryumin in a single blow. He did this to complete a subquest. Kill a regional representative within a certain time limit to receive a lowest rank mana stone draw token, which would grant 1 to 5 mana stones at random. The other players who saw Black Scythe kill Ryumin started to protest, even though he was just following the quest. Still, anger and frustration quickly spread, and the crowd turned on Black Scythe for killing him so easily. By killing Ryumin, Black Scythe now became the new regional representative. On top of that, the nickname floating above his head changed color. Apparently, in this 4th round, the more players you kill, the darker your nickname becomes, serving as a warning to others that you've taken lives. People began calling Black Scythe a murderer, but he fired back, telling them to stop being hypocrites and accept the reality. In this trial, it's kill or be killed. After hearing that, the others started to talk amongst themselves, discussing how they'd handle the quest from here on out. Meanwhile, Seo Arin was deeply shaken by the idea of killing others, but in the end, she knew. If she wanted to survive, she had no choice. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.